Hello, team players. I'm back with more Rival Academies content, and this time we're talking about brand new Monk Feats. Let's dive in. First, we've got 3 new stances to talk about, starting with Flood Stance. To enter this stance, you must hold your breath, and you can do so for up to 10 minutes. You automatically leave the stance if you stop holding your breath. However, you do not lose air if you attack, get critically hit, or critically fail a save. You do lose air if you try to speak, including casting a spell. While you're in this stance, the only strikes you can make are flooded river unarmed attacks. These deal 1d8 bludgeoning damage and have the non-lethal, trip, unarmed, and water traits. If you're underwater, they also gain the forceful trait. You also don't take the normal attack penalty for using these attacks underwater. This stance is pretty good if you're in an underwater campaign, but otherwise not that great. The fact that you have to hold your breath while using this makes it pretty dangerous, but these attacks do have the trip trait, which means that you get an item bonus on your trip attempts if you have the right rune on your hand reps of mighty blows. And the forceful trait does mean that you do extra damage if you're underwater and you attack more than once. If you're in a campaign where you're underwater a lot, I'd take this. Otherwise, there are better stances out there. Next, we've got what I consider to be the best new stance, Reflective Ripple Stance. You must be in armor to use this feat, but you can make flowing wave attacks that deal 1d6 bludgeoning damage. They have the Agile, Disarm, Finesse, Non-Lethal, Trip, Unarmed, and Water traits. While in this stance, you also gain a +1 circumstance bonus to your attempts to disarm, swim, or trip. You also gain a +2 circumstance bonus to your reflex DC against being disarmed or tripped. The +2 bonus on your defense against being disarmed isn't going to apply in a lot of situations because you're a monk. But if you have monastic weaponry, this can be good. The +2 bonus on your defense against being tripped, however, is very, very good. And the bonus on disarm and trip actually stacks with the bonus you would get from your hand wraps of mighty blows, because these attacks have the disarm and trip traits. Meaning, you start off at 1, but once you get a +1 rune on your hand wraps of mighty blows, then it's +2 and further. And these attacks also have the Agile trait, which means less of a multiple attack penalty on top of that. This is a very good stance, and I highly recommend you at least consider this. And our final stance is Waterfowl Stance. This requires monastic weaponry. While you're in this stance, a bunch of sword-like weapons become monk weapons for you, meaning you can use your monk abilities with them. When you tumble through a creature's space or leap over them, you can deal 1d6 slashing damage. This damage increases as you get better striking runes on those weapons. To me, this is an okay feat. It's just extra damage if you happen to be able to tumble through or leap over a creature, which isn't that great, to be honest with you, because you have to succeed at one of those to even do the extra damage. And at the end of the day, it's just extra damage. Granted, damage is important, it's just not everything. Now, once we're done with the 3 stances, we can talk about other feats. Starting with Student of Water. If you're underwater, you have cover against creatures outside the water. In addition, the moment you qualify for the Underwater Marauder and Water Sprint feats, you gain them. Underwater Marauder means that you're no longer off guard while you're underwater, and you can use bludgeoning and slashing weapons more effectively. Water Sprint allows you to walk on water as long as you start on land and you end your movement on land. So if you need to cross a river a lot, this is actually a very good feat. Or you need to be underwater or something. But otherwise, it's incredibly situational. I would not recommend picking up this feat for most campaigns. Next, we've got Divert Stream Flow. As a reaction, if you're damaged by a melee strike from a creature within your reach, you can reposition that creature using an athletics check. If you succeed on this, you can take a step. This is really good for getting an enemy in a flanking position with you and an ally. And since this is a reaction, no multiple attack penalty. In most cases, Stand still is a better reaction, but depending on the situation, this may be better or stand still may be better. Next up is tributary circulation, which you can spend 1 or 2 actions on. You gain a +2 bonus on will saves and any saves against poison until the beginning of your next turn. You can also spend 2 actions on this in order to make a flat check against any persistent poison damage you're taking, reducing the DC to 10 as if you had received assisted recovery. The poison stuff is actually pretty situational, but the +2 on will saves is very, very good. There are a lot of creatures out there that have abilities that require will saves. And as a monk, you might already be pretty good at will saves. And this just makes them even better. And this isn't even a once per day thing. You do have to spend at least 1 action using this. But monks have extra actions anyway, thanks to Flurry of Blows. So this can be a great thing to do with your 3rd action, depending on the encounter you're running into. Culvert Collapse requires you to be in flood stance, and an enemy has to have damaged you since your last turn. For 1 action, you can make a flooded river attack against the required enemy. This strike deals an additional 1d8 persistent bleed damage. Persistent bleed damage can be good, since it puts them on a timer, but it's not going to work on every creature, unfortunately. And at the end of the day, it's just damage. Not a huge fan of this feat, to be honest, and especially since it requires flood stance, which is already situational. In my opinion, this feat is good, it's just not great. Next we have another feat that makes Reflective Ripple Stance one of the best feats here. Rippling Spin is a reaction that is triggered when you're hit with a physical melee attack by a creature you can see that is within your reach. And you do have to be in Reflective Ripple Stance to use this. After the enemy does their damage, you step, but you have to end your movement adjacent to the creature that damaged you. Then you can attempt an athletics check to disarm or trip the attacker. This is pretty good action economy, and you're not going to take a multiple attack penalty under disarm or trip attempt because it's a reaction. You're doing it during the enemy's turn. And if you at least succeed, then it's action economy manipulation either way. And if you trip them, then they're also off guard. It's very, very good. I would highly recommend you pick up this feat. Also at level 8, we have Snakebird's Shadow, which requires you to be in Waterfowl stance and wielding a monk weapon in the sword weapon group. For 2 actions, you can make a melee strike against each creature in a 15-foot line. Each of these attacks count towards your multiple attack penalty, but you do not increase your multiple attack penalty until after you've made all the attacks. This feat is okay, it's not great. The main reason this feat isn't that great is because you gotta get your enemies into a line, which honestly is pretty hard to do. Plus, it requires Waterfowl stance, which, unless you're wanting to do a monk that uses a sword, isn't all that great to begin with. You're just not going to use this feat anywhere near as much as you think. Really, right now, I really can't think of anything that would force your enemies into a line. But you guys can let me know in the comments if you think of something that makes this feat actually good. Next we have Wake to Strike, which you have to use on a creature that is either prone or swimming. For 2 actions, you can make that creature make a Fortitude saving throw. If the creature is prone, they can stand as a free action when you use this. But unless they critically succeed, they are at least sickened 1 on a success, sickened 2 on a failure, and you can grapple them with an athletics check as part of this. On a critical failure, they're also sickened 2, but if you succeed on the grapple check, you get a critical success instead. This feat is very, very good because you can trip them and then use this on them. Granted, a lot of enemies have high Fortitude saving throws, but as long as they don't critically succeed, they're taking a -1 to everything, which is already good. And you are going to take a -5 penalty on that grapple check if you do it this way. But maybe a different party member trips them, and then you can use this on them. They do get to stand, but then you grapple them. So, they're taking a -1 to basically everything, and a -3 to their AC. There are very few things that make an opponent sickened, And this is one of them. Sickened is like one of the best debuffs in the entire game. I highly recommend you pick up this feat regardless of what monk you're using. Then we have another really good feat with Lesson of Flux. As a reaction once per hour, when you fail a skill check to grab, reposition, shove, trip, or tumble through, you can re-roll the check and take these second results. If you still fail or critically fail, you can ask a question as if you had succeeded at recall knowledge against that enemy specifically. So even if you still fail on the attempt after the reroll, you still get information, which is a big deal. Again, a great feat for any monk in the game, but especially ones that want to focus on combat maneuvers. Hopefully this feat will get people to actually use recall knowledge, especially since you don't even have to roll for this. It's just, you get the information, and you don't even have to be good at recall knowledge to use this. Alright, we got 2 more feats to talk about in this video, starting with Wave Dashes Rocks. For one action, you can make a melee strike against a creature that you have grabbed or restrained, after which they are no longer grabbed or restrained by you. This attack has to be made with an unarmed attack or a monk weapon. However, if you hit a creature with this strike, they're knocked prone, and they're a clumsy one and enfeebled one until the end of their next turn. Another great feat here, as not only are you dealing the damage, but you're also lowering their AC and their damage output. Lowering their AC by 3 until the end of their next turn is already really good. But lowering their damage output makes it even better. And there's no saving throw against this. You just have to hit. Granted, you can't use this as part of Flurry of Blows, but lowering their AC by 3 for your Flurry of Blows is really good. And you're lowering their AC for everyone, not just you. Especially since you're probably going to be using agile unarmed attacks. And the last feat I'm going to talk about is another feat that makes Reflective Ribble Stance really good. For 2 actions, if you're in Reflective Ribble Stance, you can make an athletics check to trip every creature standing on the ground within a 10-foot emanation of you. These attacks do count towards your multiple attack penalty, but don't increase your multiple attack penalty until after you've made all the trip attempts. Another phenomenal feat here, especially if you're surrounded by enemies. You get to trip all of them at full athletics bonus. But you do have to be careful with this because it's every creature standing on the ground, including your allies, making this pretty dangerous to use if your allies are nearby. But if you just got enemies around, this is a fantastic feat. You can hit a lot of enemies with this if they're surrounding you. You can only use this once per minute, so basically once per encounter. Granted, I wouldn't waste this on 1 or 2 enemies, at least 3. Otherwise, it isn't great action economy because it does take 2 actions to use this. But yeah, using this and then using Flurry of Blows on one of them is a very good strategy, especially if you have something like Stunning Blows, because then it's very debilitating. And that's all the feats we got in Rival Academies for monks. I'm still trying to figure out this whole streaming thing, so sorry if you guys were looking forward to the stream on Friday. I don't know what happened, but I'll figure it out eventually. But if you guys enjoyed this video, go ahead and leave a like. Let me know what you think of the monk feats in the comments below. You can also check out my description for my Patreon page, my Discord, and my other social media. And if you guys want to see my latest build, one that will definitely help out a monk using some of these feats, I would recommend you check out this video here. Thank you guys so much for watching, and remember, teamwork is vital. It helps us solve problems.